How's it going, guys? Spider-Man has had his ups and downs, as a comic book character and as a movie franchise. There have been so many different types of Spider-Man movies in the past couple decades alone, some amazing and some just pitiful. Today we'll explore my personal opinions on the franchise as I rank all of Spidey's movies from worst to best. Number 9. Venom. This sucks. It just sucks. I know it's not even a Spider-Man movie by definition, but I still figured it's worth including. There's essentially nothing good about this movie. The script is beyond lazy, which makes most parts of the narrative, especially the whole backstory, unbelievable and forced. The villain could not be more generic, and Riz Ahmed was a terrible casting choice, not even taking into account his lazy performance. The symbiote being able to speak to Eddie Brock was an interesting approach that had a lot of potential, but was pulled off in such a dumb, nonsensical way. This part in particular felt like such a middle finger to everyone who actually highly anticipated this movie.
Here's your evidence.
Jump. Pussy.
Venom truly is nothing like it was advertised to be, but rather what we should have expected from a movie that's PG-13, 1 hour and 52 minutes long, directed by Ruben Fleischer, and distributed by Sony. It's a mess. Number 8. Spider-Man 3. I hate putting this so low on the list because I grew up with the original Spider-Man trilogy and always adored what I perceived as its epic conclusion. The first time I found out people hate this movie, I was honestly shocked, but having rewatched it recently, I'm well aware why. If Venom, or honestly if the whole symbiote wasn't a part of this at all, the movie would be much stronger, not even just regarding those strange choices made with Peter's newfound identity with the symbiote, but also the story as a whole. The symbiote plot, mixed with those of Sandman, Mary Jane, and Harry Osborn, made the whole movie feel so overstuffed, directionless, and long. It's 2 hours and 19 minutes, and sure feels like it. The last 45 to 60 minutes of the movie in particular are almost impossible to get through. If this movie didn't try to satisfy so many different types of fans, but rather created a story focused on Peter's relationships with Mary Jane and Harry, especially Mary Jane given how much she feels like a prop in this movie, Spider-Man 3 and the trilogy as a whole would be incredible. Unfortunately, Spider-Man 3 is a mess and not the Spider-Man movie we deserve. Number 7. The Amazing Spider-Man 2. This is similar to Spider-Man 3 in that it has too many different ideas going for it. However, it was clearly trying to build Spider-Man a universe of his own rather than finish one. Introducing Harry Osborn, the Green Goblin, Electro, the Rhino, the Sinister Six in this shot that I'm showing you now, and a lot of uninteresting lore regarding Peter's parents, this movie is a lot of build-up that's never as satisfying as it should be. Some of its considerably weird choices include Electro's alter ego and backstory, Dane DeHaan being cast as Harry Osborn, and generally the untold story of Spider-Man vibe that this movie, as well as its predecessor, created. That being said, I didn't hate all of it. In fact, I thought it was better than some reviews might suggest. The suit is an improvement from The Amazing Spider-Man, and the ending sure made me cry. It really hits hard considering the ending of the first one and its implications on Peter, not to get into spoilers. Regardless, it's too bad that this, as well as the other Amazing Spider-Man movie, were considerably weak, and this story was the ending it got. Number 6. The Amazing Spider-Man. A lot of my comments about the Amazing Spider-Man movies pertain to both of them. I've always believed Andrew Garfield was the worst Spider-Man of the three, and genuinely just a miscast. He acts almost hungover throughout both movies. This one in particular does a lot that repeats the 2002 Spider-Man movie, and tries to make some things fresh and unique that just don't work. Examples of this include his inspiration behind the Spider-Man suit, the origin of his powers, and the new and less lovable Uncle Ben and his version of the iconic "with great power comes great responsibility" line.
You're a lot like your father. You really are, Peter, and that's a good thing. But your father lived by a philosophy, a principle, really. He believed that if you could do good things for other people, you had a moral obligation to do those things. That's what's at stake here. Not choice, responsibility.
I mean, what is that? Also, the villain, and again, lore behind Peter Parker's parents, lean more towards the uninteresting side, and the suit looks like a basketball. In general, it's hard to justify the existence of these movies and why Mark Webb directed both of them. But hey, they have their moments, and again, regarding both movies, Gwen is an awesome love interest, and her chemistry with Peter gives the movie a lot of charm and depth. While this isn't the Spider-Man movie we deserve, it's what we got. Number 5, Spider-Man Far From Home. This isn't a bad movie by any means. I just firmly believe that it feels like another crank in the Marvel machine. The first time I watched a Marvel Cinematic Universe movie and thought, this isn't real cinema! Every redeeming quality of this movie was already done just as well or better in its predecessor, as Spider-Man Homecoming strived to keep the Spider-Man franchise fresh, and it worked. These same elements carried Far From Home, but because we saw as much as we needed to see in Homecoming, they weren't as interesting or different as I would have liked. There is a new love interest, but she's underdeveloped and feels like a downgrade from Liz. Sorry Zendaya fans, but her character was just poorly written. While there is in fact a lot to love, most notably the special effects, the incredibly versatile Jake Gyllenhaal, and the spectacular mid and post-credit scenes, Far From Home more or less feels like filler for after Avengers Endgame. I didn't think it had much to say, and I generally wish it had more to offer. Number 4, Spider-Man Homecoming. Homecoming is awesome, and I nearly put it at number 3 on my list. As I said with Far From Home, this movie tries so hard to break away from what's already been done several times, and as a result feels very fresh and unique. This includes Tony Revolori as a Guatemalan American Flash, and Ned and Liz, who were main characters that no one knew about before this movie came out. There's also the extremely high-tech and Tony Stark-esque suit, the young Aunt May, and so much more. All of it works so well. Tom Holland makes a great Peter Parker, and you can really feel the high school crush energy radiating off of him with Liz, the love interest, almost in a John Hughes type context. The Vulture is a great villain, and that car scene, which some of you may know what I'm talking about, is my favorite scene in the movie. Keep in mind this is Spider-Man's first standalone MCU movie, so it involves a lot of him basically sucking up to Tony Stark, which diehard Spider-Man fans may disapprove of, but in the case of Homecoming, I think it works pretty well. Generally, it's a fun time, and I enjoyed this movie quite a lot. Number 3, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. This movie was teased to be incredible, and my god, it sure was. It has so many themes of maturity, responsibility, wanting to live up to everyone's expectations, and most importantly, that anyone can wear the mask. This is all wrapped up in an original and eye-pleasing style of animation, which adds to its increasingly interesting story. The pacing, the visuals, the music, the narrative, everything about this defies superhero movie norms in a way that just feels so sleek and complete. There's nothing else like Into the Spider-Verse. My main issue with it is Kingpin, as he's an underdeveloped and rather unconvincing villain. However, the movie brings a lot of ideas to the table, enough to possibly even start a cinematic universe of its own. This was a breath of fresh air in a world of formulaic and predictable superhero movies, and I hope that we get a lot more like it. Who would have known that Marvel and Sony Animation can in fact create something great? Number 2, Spider-Man. Am I biased because of my childhood? Possibly, but I've seen this movie several times and it still never fails to make me laugh and cry. Some parts are dated, sure, but it's still an incredibly told story. In a world of cinematic universes and a genre that takes itself so seriously, Spider-Man is one of a kind. It feels like a live-action comic book adventure, and so much of it works so well. Green Goblin is an excellent villain for Peter Parker, especially considering their alter egos and the implications they have on one another. The blend of action and drama keeps viewers enthralled from start to finish, as the conflicts Peter has in his crime fighting and personal lives all connect to one gripping, overarching story. Also, needless to say, the casting is on point. Willem Dafoe was born to play the Green Goblin, Tobey Maguire is a perfect Peter Parker, and you would even think characters like Harry, Aunt May, and especially J. Jonah Jameson were created in the first place with their respected actors in mind. If you haven't seen this film, Spider-Man fan or not, I guarantee that you'll love it. And when you're done watching, I guarantee you'll start rolling number 1 on my list. Number 1, Spider-Man 2. This movie is spectacular. Every sequel should build and expand upon its predecessor, and Spider-Man 2 does just that. We know that he's a crime-fighting superhero, but now we begin to see him truly struggle to balance that life in his personal life, wondering if his crime-fighting one is worth it and losing touch of who he truly is. All of his choices have dire consequences, and he spends the duration of the movie figuring out which consequences are worth facing. Additionally, the villain is probably the most compelling of any Spider-Man movie. He's a threat and evil in many ways, but his true intentions are rooted in wanting good for mankind. When his obsession, as well as 4 mechanical arms, overtake him, he loses touch of who he is, just as Peter does. This is like the first movie, but with higher stakes and deeper emotion. It's the most human of the Spider-Man movies, but the rawness of it doesn't make it less fun or action-packed. That being said, it's anything one could ask of a sequel to an already amazing movie. In my opinion, it's the Dark Knight of Marvel movies and the magnum opus of the Spider-Man franchise. If you haven't seen this, it'll open you up to a totally different level of superhero movies. Thank you guys so much for watching. I just want to remind you that these are my opinions, but I'm sticking with them. Make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and follow me on Letterboxd for more of my takes on movies. Leave a comment to let me know what you want to see me do next, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.